Roll for Crit is made possible thanks to the support of viewers like you and our patrons on our Patreon page.
You can become a patron for just $1 a month at patreon.com/rollforcrit. This is a Roll for Crit preview for Shards of the Jaguar, which is on Kickstarter right now. This is a competitive game in which players are competing to be named the new leader of their tribe. The old leader, his essence was split out into multiple crystals, and you are going to be collecting those crystals as the game goes on, hence the Shards of the Jaguar, while also trying to avoid traps that your opponents are going to be setting for you.
Each round starts with players on this track deciding which trap they're going to trigger. Most of these traps will cause damage, and when you choose one of them, you'll look at these tokens and secretly decide one, usually referring to which color or symbol will be activated. Depending on where you select the traps, will also decide turn order for actions. Now, the actions, you'll have 4 action points to spend through most of the game, and then you'll get more near the very end of the game. You have moving, quite simple, 1 action point for 1 movement space. There is pick up. This is picking up multiple things on the board, such as these little treasure chests to get amulets, map pieces, crystals, or these ritual sites, which is what you use to spend the crystals on. Then there is healing. You will be taking damage throughout this game. So you can, depending on the number of action points you spend in the healing action, you can heal more health points. Now, there's technically one other thing you can spend action points on, and that's running. The way running works is you forgo all your actions. So you pretty much decide either if you're going to run or do a mixture of the other stuff I mentioned earlier. Running is pretty much just going to let you move a lot. So if you really need to get somewhere fast, I suggest you book it. Now, throughout the game, you'll also be getting amulets, which could let you do other different kinds of actions that don't cost action points. They come in different colors, so depending on which ones you have, they'll give weird abilities. Sometimes they'll augment some of your actions. Sometimes they'll give you extra actions. So it's up to you to decide how to spend them.
Once players have finished taking all the actions they can or want to on their turn, you move into the trap activation phase. Now you go from left to right and reveal which traps were activated and how. So this only happens if someone chose to place their marker there at the start of the round. Traps are poisonous darts, earthquakes, guards, all kinds of little hidden booby traps that might hit you while you're trying to explore the temple, and they all correspond to a different element of the board. Could be the color of the space of the floor, the color of a wall, or even the number of column that you're in. So each board is split into 3 different columns. And whichever player activated that trap will choose one of those options secretly, and at the end of the round, any players that are in one of the relevant spaces will take a penalty. It could be damage, it could be increasing their curse factor, which will cause them to lose points at the end of the game. It could even be stunning them, giving them fewer actions to take on the following turn. They will get points for each player they manage to catch in one of those traps, but if the person who activated a trap gets caught in one of their own traps, not only do they get hurt by it, they also forfeit the right to any points they might have gotten if anyone else fell into the trap as well. There are 2 other things that are activated after the traps and are referred to as traps, but act a little bit differently. The first one is the secret door. The player who went here gets to create a secret pathway that only they can use. They can put 2 different doorways anywhere on the board, but they must be 4 spaces apart, no more than that at least. They could be closer if you want. And while those are in place, that player can use them to take a little shortcut. Then there is the flood. When the flood is activated, that player chooses a direction, and every player is pushed 2 spaces in that direction. So you can use this to set players back or make things more inconvenient for them. But you also have another benefit there. If you are being pushed by the flood, instead of going the full 2 spaces, you can choose to go just 1 space, and then you get to perform a take action for free. So you might make it so you move yourself onto a particular item that you were really hoping to get. You'll notice there are 4 main sections of the board, and that 4th section is actually off limits until the final 2 rounds of the game. There's going to be a wall blocking it off before then. Once those last 2 rounds are open, that board is in play, you can move on to it, and this is a special one because throughout the rest of the game you've been collecting these map pieces on various spaces, And if you have two different map pieces, you can put them together, and they are going to direct you towards a specific spot on that board based on the row and column you want to be in. If you go to that space, you can activate that action, and you get to take a heart of the Jaguar. This is a really cool extra special crystal that's worth more points, and if you get there early, you're going to get an additional crystal as well of a different color. You can also play with unique character abilities. So first, each character gets to start out with a different color amulet, so they'll have some of special action that only they can take at the start. And then there are going to be new abilities you can gain as you go. Your characters will level up, and the further along they get, the more advanced they are. Their final stages actually give them really interesting powers that only they can use.
Once you finish the 8 rounds, there's one more thing to do, and that's to escape the temple. Now, you'll get some extra movement depending on your health, and you can try to make your way to the exits. If you're unable to make it, you're going to gain curse depending on how far away you are from the exit doors. At the end, you're going to tally up your points depending on which crystals you have, because each color scores differently. You're also going to get points for the rituals you do, as well as some other things that, like, you'll actually lose points based on your curse, so if you're the highest or second highest, and also gain some points on where your health is. The main mechanic, though, really is trying to look at your opponents and read what they're doing in order to make sure your traps hit, or maybe make sure that you don't hit their traps. Because depending on that first pace, for example, let's say the Guardians was first. That's the one with the claws. So if that person will always go first, and if they ended on a space with a white claw, odds are they didn't choose that one unless they really want to make sure they hit someone with that claw, because that is 4 damage. It's nothing to be scared of. It's something to be scared of, I mean. So if you're low on health, maybe they are trying to trick you into that. Or maybe if they know that you really need that green crystal, they're going to choose that just so you have to decide, is that crystal worth that amount of health loss, or whatever the other traps may be.
Yeah, you're definitely keeping an eye on what other players are doing and trying to outmaneuver them there. Or sometimes players might concentrate on the last 2 spaces there that aren't actually technically traps. So maybe some rounds will be like, oh, I can relax a little bit. There aren't quite as many things potentially that will be killing me. I don't have to worry about the walls this time, at least, for instance. And then beyond that, you're looking around the board and you're trying to travel to different places and figure out what you want. A lot of the elements of the board in terms of setup are randomized, so there are various colors and various different ritual tokens that could be in play and that will be put out in different spaces of the board. So a ritual might require you to have a blue and a yellow crystal maybe, but the blue and yellow crystals might not be near that, or they might be right next to it. That can change every game, so you're figuring out what's the best path that I can take, and am I competing with other players as well to get those? Maybe someone else wants those too. Whoever completes those rituals first is going to get more points. So there's definitely a race element to the game. If you are moving through quicker, if you're further in the lead, you have first dibs on a lot of these items, that's going to give you a big advantage.
Those crystals, don't forget about them, because depending on what you have, whether you use them for a ritual or not, they do some really weird different things. Some of them just a flat good bonus. Some of them can get you up to 100 points if you have enough crystals. It can be really weird.
Yes, the way they're scored is all very different. So it's not just like, this one's worth 3, this one's worth 5. Some of them are for sets. The heart of the Jaguar itself is just worth the flat 25 points, which is a lot. Overall, I feel like the game kind of reminded me of like Legends of the Hidden Temple, the old Nickelodeon game show. It has that sort of vibe to it. It definitely feels like something I think you could play with younger kids, although there are some of those more advanced elements like the leveling up. There are options to play without those for more introductory games, but it has that sort of old school fun vibe to it, I think, where you're exploring a weird place and you're setting traps and finding shiny objects. That takes me back to some of those old style games, some kind of the same vibe I get from things like a Clank, for instance, where it's just fun to explore a weird temple and pick up different items. But the gameplay, to be clear, very different from Clank.
Yeah,
That's
no,
just a
no
vibe
deck building
comparison.
Let us know if you have the Heart of the Jaguar and you're looking to back this. If you're unsure, we'll have a link down below to the Kickstarter so you can see more. And of course, let us know in those comments down below what you think of this game. Until then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this has been a Roll for Crit preview. Catch the latest from Roll for Crit by liking and subscribing, and don't forget to support us on Patreon.
Don't get analysis paralysis. Just click those buttons. Help us out.